Welcome back. Thanks again for joining us for another episode as we continue studying through the Word of God together. We are continuing through the book of Genesis. We are going to start in Genesis chapter 45 here in just a moment. Just a little bit of context here. In Genesis 45, Joseph is now standing in front of his brothers. He's standing there. He has acknowledged, he's met Benjamin. He's acknowledged, they've kind of, if you say, passed all of his tests. They've come. Judah and the others are willing to sacrifice their lives for the protection of their brother Benjamin. And at this point, we're going to see in this section where Joseph and all the things he'd been trying to do to find out if he can be trusted and to hold back any emotion, all just comes out in this section where Joseph now just confesses who he is, makes himself known to the Ben. It's been now we're going to look about 22 years since they've seen him. And I guess he's probably dressed more like an Egyptian than a Hebrew. He's speaking a different language. All of those things come into account where they at first, even when he acknowledges who he is, at first have no idea. They don't believe it. They're kind of confused. They assume he's dead, which all things being equal probably is what happens to slaves after so many years. He would have been too old to be effective as a worker. So they have a right to think that way. So now you're just beginning to see God's plan unfold. And what I love in this passage is you begin to see Joseph stating what he believed God was doing through all of this, that God was instrumental in all of this. Let's start chapter 45, verse 1. Then Joseph could not restrain himself before all those who stood by him, and he cried out, "Make everyone go out from me." So no one stood with him, while Joseph made himself known to his brothers, and he wept aloud, and the Egyptians and the house of Pharaoh heard it. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Does my father still live?" But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed in his presence. Now, I find it intriguing there. You do get to see, we've looked at the past. Why is it that Joseph has put his brothers through all these tests? What's going on? What was his thinking? And as you come to the end, you get a glimpse of his thinking. He has asked them more than once about their father. They have mentioned more than once that their father is home. He is well. But yet the first thing he does when he tells them who he was is he asks, "Is my father still alive?" He finally brings it out. Can you guys be trusted? Have you treated him as badly as you treated me? And so finally all the emotion, all of the charade is gone. And he's like, "I want to know what's going on." Of course, his brothers are surprised. What in the world are you talking about? They're still kind of taken back. The whole scenario is surprising. You got this guy you think is going to either kill you or enslave you, and then he turns around and admits that he's your long-lost brother. Let's go to verse number 4. And Joseph said to his brothers, "Please come near to me." So they came near, and he said, "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. But now do not therefore be grieved or angry with yourselves because you sold me here." Catch this. "For God sent me here before you to preserve life. For these 2 years the famine has been in the land, and there are still 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. And God sent me before you to preserve a posterity for you in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So now it was not you who sent me here, but God. And he has made me a father to Pharaoh, and the Lord of all of his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt." So immediately Joseph kind of answers. When you start this study, and a lot of theologians at the beginning, when he is sold into slavery, begin to ask the question, is this God's plan? Was this Joseph's brothers doing something sinful that God then used? When God gave the dream, it was a God saying, "I don't like how this is going to end up, but I'm just going to tell you how it's going to end up." And at least from Joseph's experience here, you get to see that Joseph is telling him what he believes to be true, that God is the one who did all this. God sent him. And we see that God has had his hand of protection on him the whole time. As a slave, he was exalted to a position much higher than a slave would be in the prison. He became the head of the prison. And now he's sitting as a second in command, really, as he says, a father, a mentor, an encourager to Pharaoh. And he's at the position he's been given at this situation is an incredible position, and it was the use of God. But he also said it was use of God to save their lives. Yeah, Egypt was taken care of and all of those things, but the ultimate point was to protect the children of Israel. Remember, God had made a promise to Abraham that'd be a great nation. So even in this situation, God used Egypt and used Pharaoh and used all of those situations to bring Joseph in so that there could be a place of protection and a place for them to grow in Egypt. And of course, what we'll look at coming soon is the idea of years later they're in slavery. We'll talk about how all that happens. But you see the situation where Joseph clearly is now seeing how all of it's worked out, and he's trying to encourage his brothers in this. Let's go to verse number 9. Hurry and go up to my father and say to him, thus says your son Joseph, God has made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down to me. Do not tarry. You shall dwell in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near to me. And you and your children, your children's children, your flocks and your herds, and all that you have. There I will provide for you, lest you and your household and all that you have come to poverty. For there are still 5 years of famine. And behold, your eyes and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see that it is my mouth that speaks to you. You shall tell my father and all the glory of my glory in Egypt, and all that you have seen, and you shall hurry and bring my father down here. Now, immediately you've got to see that he's stating this not only am I alive, there's a bigger plan. You need to bring the whole family up here. You can keep coming and buy scraps and do all of that, but just come live by me. Come, let me take care of you. I think the assumption was come be by me through the famine and while he's there, and then ultimately they'd work their way back. I think ultimately them being there for as long as they did in slavery probably wasn't the initial thought, but we do see he's bringing them up here. Let's continue. He says in verse 14, then he fell on his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept in his neck. Moreover, he kissed all his brothers and wept over them, and after that his brothers talked with him. Now, the next few verses, it talks about the idea this information was sent to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh agreed, bring them down. All of their animals come, let them live with us. And so you see, this was a plan. I mean, Joseph had that much power, and I mean, think, Pharaoh, they had become extremely wealthy as a nation because all the nations were coming to them. They were the nation of power. He had made Pharaoh the most powerful man in the world, in the known world at that time. And obviously, he had a great love for Joseph and all that he had done so that they weren't finding themselves in this horrible situation. And you see that God used even a pagan king to be the hand of which he used to work in the lives of his people. One of the things when I look at this, one, you do see full reconciliation here. One, you see full forgiveness of Joseph, because even, you know, we see meant for bad, you know, when God meant for bad, God meant for good. However you want to view it, and there, you know, this is how Joseph put it, but God had a plan. It worked itself out to protect Israel, to protect the children of Israel, to ultimately put Joseph where he's at, to make all of this possible. And we can look at it and we say, well, what is God doing in my life? And it does show sometimes the good is there for a reason. It's something that you can look at and thank God for. Or the bad, the bad sometimes comes in, doesn't always make sense. We've said this before. Sometimes the bad is there as a result of something we've done. Sometimes the bad is there because God is allowing it there to test us and to teach us. But the thing we see is one, God's hand over all of this to fulfill his ultimate plan. Two, we see Joseph's willingness to forgive. He could have been angry because in the 13 years leading up to his position of authority, he was not in a comfortable life. So we could see Joseph could have still been angry, having lost all of this with his family, but he did not. And then thirdly, we see that ultimately this is a result of his brothers taking responsibility. You see that moving forward, there is going to be a reconciliation that would not have been there otherwise. And so we can see just simple principles. Whatever's going on in your life, seek God's face, as it said in Hebrews. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, his righteousness. All these things should be added unto you. In Hebrews, that was in Matthew. Hebrews, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of your faith. Yeah. Keeping your eyes on him, seeking him first. Those are the things that God says he's going to bless. Those are the things you're going to find fulfillment and joy. And so no matter where you are, keep going, flourish where God has you. One point I want to bring out that I think is an intriguing point is there's an interesting concept in the book of Psalm, chapter 1, where it says, you should be like a tree. This is the righteous man, the blessed man, planted by the rivers of water. The word planted there is done in the passive. The tree did not plant itself. It was planted by someone else. And if the righteous, the blessed people are blessed, they are blessed because they have been planted by multiple rivers. If one runs empty and it looks like life's falling apart, there's another one that God is using to bring the nourishment. Where you are, God has you there, planted you. Keep your eyes on him. Do your best and flourish where you are at, and then watch God do great things after this. Well, I do appreciate the wonderful privilege you give to me to be part of your day as we walk through this passage. We'll continue to look into Jacob's response as we continue to look through this account and continue to see how God has used this scenario, this narrative, for to honor him and to honor himself and to protect his chosen nation. Again, thank you for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you again next time.